Hi future millionaires, welcome back to Debt to Millionaire. I'm John. Today I'm going to tell you about how when I was 18, I'm 23 now, I gambled away what was a very large amount of money for me at the time, and it still is to be honest. How I then, I suppose you'd say, relapsed and gambled again a couple of years later. Then how I went on to put in a sort of safeguard to prevent me from gambling again, and ultimately how I overcame the desire to gamble completely. If you are finding that you're gambling and you don't really want to be, you just find yourself with the urge to gamble and it's affecting you negatively, either emotionally or, of course, financially, then give this video a watch because it could help you. So when I was 16, my parents handed over to me a pot of about £9,000 that they'd saved up for me over many, many years, and they were putting that money away at like £10 and £20 at a time, like per week or something. And then after almost a decade or more of saving that up, they handed that over to me and entrusted it to me to do with whatever I wanted to. I didn't really do much with that money until I turned 18, which is the age in the UK where you're legally allowed to start investing. Now, I know you're not here to hear about investing. You probably want me to talk about gambling on sports events and casino games, and don't worry, we'll get to that. My gambling problem stemmed from what was effectively gambling with the stock market, because I had no idea what I was doing. Since then, I've read tens, maybe even over 100 books on all different topics and aspects of investing, and I have a reasonably good idea of what I'm doing now. But back then, when I didn't know what I was investing my money into, it was as good as gambling. If you don't understand what you're investing your money into, eventually, inevitably, you're going to lose money. So back when I was 18, for the brief time when I was 18 that I dabbled in stocks, I was getting my advice on which stocks to buy from those internet forums full of amateur traders and people just spouting off saying this stock is an absolute sure thing that it's going to 10x in price in the next few months. And being 18, I was naive and inexperienced, didn't know what I was doing with investing, so I was inclined to believe them. I wanted to grow my pot of money just like everyone else does, and I thought that that was the way to do it. I took a few £1,000s from the £9,000 pot that my parents gave me, and I put it in a few different stocks that I was speculating in based on, primarily, on the advice from these internet forums. And I mean, long story short, they tanked in value. So I still had a few, I think it was £5,000 left after that stock nightmare. And I thought, you know what, stock trading isn't for me. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I still want to grow this money. At age 18 in the UK, as well as being able to start investing, you're also allowed to start gambling. And this is where the story starts to pick up. So I was looking on these lists of ways to make money online, which everyone's looked at. And at the top of the list, it said something called matched betting. Matched betting is an actual risk-free system. This sounds like a scam. It's not. It's an actual system where you can take advantage of the sign-up bonuses offered by gambling websites. So gambling websites, a lot of them offer, say, £25, maybe £50 worth of gambling credit once you open an account with them. So you open your account, you then place a bet with them using that credit. If you win the bet, you get that money in cash, which you can then withdraw from your account, or if the bet loses, then you've lost the credit. But there's a way where you can guarantee that you're going to win, and that money converts into cash, which you can then withdraw. I'm not going to go into the details of the system. You can look into match betting if you want on your own to find out how it works, but I highly recommend that you don't, because the reason they offer those sign-up bonuses, even though they might be losing money on it in the short term, is to get you to sign up and to have an active open account with the gambling website. And then, if you're just going about your daily business and then you think, oh, you know what, I quite liked placing that bet that I placed the other day, and my account's still there, got my credit card or whatever hooked up to it, I'll just place one bet, see what happens. That's exactly what they want to happen. So even though you can make some guaranteed money by doing match betting, it's just not worth the risk of being tempted by the allure of placing more bets. When I was doing it, you could make about £1,000 risk-free, guaranteed profit from matched betting, and I did. And I knew that the risk was there. I knew why the gambling websites were offering these free sign-up bonuses is because they knew that they could tempt people to get sort of a gambling problem, effectively. But I thought, you know what, I'm smart. I'm not going to get sucked into real gambling. Like, what kind of moron would place all of the money that they have at their disposal on a bet? Now, I have since realised that the root of the gambling problem that I went on to develop was the desire to make more money and to grow the amount of money that I had already. But I've learned as an entrepreneur that the only way that you can make big money and then hold on to it is by starting a business, providing value to people, and making money that way. Anyone can make big money if they place a big bet and they just get lucky, or maybe they play the lottery and they happen to win, or they get a big inheritance out of the blue. But unless you've earned that money, you won't have the knowledge, you won't have learned the lessons that will enable you to hold on to that money and not either waste it or gamble it away again. Anyway, I used that £1,000 that I made from my matched betting profits, and I also had that £5,000 left from the money that my parents gave me, and I started placing more bets on sports games. And I won. And then I won again, and then I won again. And I thought, hold on, you know what? If I can just keep doing this a few more times, I could build this pot up to maybe £10,000, or just a few more times after that, maybe even £100,000. And I've actually just remembered now, I remember watching a YouTube video, like in parallel while I was watching a sports game, waiting for my bet to finish and unfold. And the YouTube video was of someone like specking out a Ferrari that they were going to buy, and I was honestly thinking that if I just do enough bets, I'll be able to buy me a Ferrari like that. I kept winning, and I lost sometimes, but I kept winning for an extended period of time more than I was losing, so the pot kept getting bigger and bigger. You know that mathematically that can't keep happening indefinitely, because the odds that the gambling websites offer you are stacked against you in the favour of the gambling website. That's how they make money. It is hard-coded that the gambling website will make more money than you will in the long run. Still, I managed to get my pot of money up to, it was either 12,000 or 15,000 or 20,000. It was definitely at least 12. I remember seeing 12 at one point. It could have been 15, it could have been up to 20, but it was just such a surreal, really short period of time in my life that I can't really remember exactly, but it was a lot of money. To get to that point of having that much money from winnings, I'd actually graduated from sports betting to casino games. I mean, specifically roulette, which is where you spin the wheel and there's red or black and there's also numbers around. I'm sure you know what roulette is. In roulette, you can win or lose just as much as you can in a sports game, but in just about a few seconds, maybe 15 seconds, rather than, say, 90 minutes of a football match, which means that you make less rational decisions, I found at least. I had this crazy period of a few days where I was like putting these ridiculously big bets of like £1,000, £3,000, £5,000 in one go, in one spin of a roulette wheel. It was just ridiculous. Of course, as you'd expect, eventually there was a series of spins where I lost, and then I lost, and then I lost again, and then I lost again, blah, blah, blah. And that pot of, it could have been as high as £20,000, whittled all the way down to less than £1,000. And it was at this point that I knew I had messed up. This was a pretty low point of my life so far. My parents had saved up this, well, they put in a lot of effort to save up this money because they weren't well off at the time. And then they trusted me with it, and I just felt so guilty that I'd just wasted it. Like, I hadn't even spent it on like good experiences or a car. I'd just thrown it away, basically. I didn't tell my parents what had happened for at least a year after that point, because whenever I thought about how I might bring it up, I just felt ill. And when I did eventually tell them, it wasn't that bad. But of course they made me click the permanently close button on all of the accounts of all the gambling websites I'd opened for the matched betting purposes. When you permanently close an account with a gambling website, you can always get around it by calling up the customer service. I never did, but they tell you that. So that was that. And then I went about my life. I went to university, and I think, yeah, it was 2 years into university, I had what you would call a relapse, where I just got the sudden urge, and I was like, you know what, I've got a bit of money, and I want to gamble it. So I put a bet on an England football game, placed the bet, lost, and I was just furious with myself, because I was like, well, how could you be so stupid? You've already learned this lesson. Well, apparently not. At this point, I was like, this is it. I'm looking for ways to stop gambling, because, you know, this can't happen again. It's just, there's no point. It's not going to get me anywhere. I did a bit of researching, and there's this service in the UK at least called GamStop. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to have a look at it yourself. It's a free service where if you put your personal details into their website, then every UK licensed gambling website or app will refuse to create you an account if you try to open one with them. So that is obviously a very good preventative measure to stop you from gambling again if you ever get the desire to try again. You just won't be able to open an account. This will be in effect for a period that you choose, and I think you can choose up to 5 years, which I chose. So if your gambling is out of control, you can sign yourself up for this. But that was only half of the solution, because GamStop only stopped me from trying to gamble because I knew that I couldn't, but it didn't stop me from wanting to gamble. Something else did. The reason I got sucked into gambling in the first place was to make money. What got me to stop wanting to gamble on sports events and casino games where the odds are against you was my realization that I can control and almost ensure that I can make money from something else. Business. With a business, you don't just blindly bet on events, you create value for people by giving them things that they either need or that they want. I mean, business is arguably still a form of gambling because nothing is guaranteed, but you can control how much you increase the odds in your favour by using skill, expertise, capital, influence. If you never give up on being an entrepreneur and you keep working hard and smart on the right things, eventually you're going to win. In the long run, you can't lose, so it's not a gamble. Another realization that I had that just got rid of my gambling problem was that no super rich people in the world are rich from gambling. I was gambling to become rich, and no very rich people in the world were rich from gambling, then it can't possibly be a viable way to get rich. If you hadn't seen that before, hopefully you can see that now. The richest people in the world got to where they are today, either by providing a little bit of value to a lot of people, or a lot of value to a few people, not by betting on sports games and roulette wheels. If I hadn't had that gambling incident when I was 18 and 20 years old, then yes, my net worth today would be £10,000 higher, or £9,000 higher than it is. It's actually minus £70,000 now, so it would instead be minus £60,000. Relatively not that much different because I've still got student loan debt, a startup loan debt, and some living cost loans from my parents. But ultimately, I'm glad I learned the lesson and got it out of the way nice and early before I had too much to lose, like a family, wife and kids, or a house, or an entrepreneur's fortune. If you're watching and you have a gambling problem and you're trying to stop, and maybe you've even lost a lot of money already to it, the best thing you can do for yourself right now is to permanently close all of the open betting accounts that you have on all the different platforms, and then go to GamStop. Again, the link's in the description. Go to GamStop and sign up for that so that you won't be able to open any new accounts. GamStop also, if you want to visit their website, they offer advice on other practical ways that you can prevent yourself from gambling. Like, you can call up your bank and ask them to not allow any transactions that are gambling related. Like, they can know what the transactions are for and just prevent them. And there are some other practical ways as well, so you should give that a read. And GamStop also offers free emotional support, so if you are feeling a bit low and you feel like you can't talk to anyone about it, then that's what it's there for, so you should use it. After that, I'd recommend looking at some of the other videos on my channel, Debt to Millionaire, and hopefully you'll realise that starting your own business is the way to go for making more money, and not gambling, which is a sure way to lose money. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, consider pressing that big red subscribe button. Thanks for watching, this is Debt to Millionaire, make it happen.